Did you ever wonder what this is? It's a baptismal font that used to be used in the old days to baptize babies. It was given in 1940 by Galen Guengerich. It's quite beautiful, I think. I don't know why it came into disuse. Perhaps because it connects us quite closely with our Christian predecessors. And as we moved away over the years, we moved away from that as well. Some of you remember what was above the high pulpit before the string art was there. It was a cross. 40 years ago, give or take a little, the cross was taken down to paint the sanctuary. And a conversation ensued about whether the cross should be put back or something else put there. Some people wanted the cross, others not. This was the eventual decision. As you leave the sanctuary, if you look to the right on the eastern wall of the narthex, you'll see a pew chart, a chart of one of our previous congregations with the pews mapped out and names on the pews. In the old days, you rented your pews. That's how we raised money. We don't do that anymore either. Sometimes staying true to your commitments means changing how you keep them. I want us to think together this morning about the commitments we have made as individuals and as a congregation and how we keep them. My commitment as an individual and as a minister is to the vitality of this congregation. I'm wearing a robe this morning, as I usually do. This robe symbolizes that I have a special role to play here at All Souls. We believe in the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, but within that, I have a special role to play. These 3 fuzzy bars on the side of my roll have meaning particularly in academic settings, where because of these 3 fuzzy bars, I am called a magister, a Latin word that means the most, presumably in an academic setting, the most learned. The title that's under my name on the side of the sanctuary, however, is the opposite of magister. It's minister, which means the least one. Within this congregation, I move between a special role and being one among many ministers. What do I do here at All Souls? I'm a preacher. It's what I do on Sunday mornings, often from this pulpit. I tell the truth about my life and your life and our life together, about our world as I understand it. This tradition gives me the freedom of the pulpit to speak the truth untrammeled. I'm a pastor. I follow after people who are having a hard time. When death comes into your life or your family, when your relationship falls apart, when your kids are wayward, you have somewhere to come. someone who will gather you in and help all of us gather you in. I'm a prophet. Prophets usually are in the business of telling people things they don't want to hear. Hard truths about how the world isn't the way the world should be. Perhaps about how we aren't the way we should be. And I'm a priest, connecting us as individuals with other people and everything that is. Most of my waking hours are spent grappling with the question of how you and I can be responsible stewards of this magnificent gift we have been given, this community of faith. Working with our board and staff and lay leaders to address the diverse needs within our community and the daunting challenges that lie beyond these walls. What keeps me awake at night, sometimes literally, is the question of whether I'm up to the challenge. Some of the people who have worshiped here cast a very long shadow. None longer for me than Henry Whitney Bellows, whom I see every time I come into this sanctuary. Bellows, as many of you know, was the minister here during the Civil War era. The most pressing humanitarian crisis in Bellows' time was the appalling amount of death and injury on both sides of the Civil War. Bellows and the congregation rallied round and helped create what was then the National Sanitary Commission to care for the wounded on both sides. Eventually, after the war, that organization became the American Red Cross. One of the pressing ethical challenges during that era was people who were poor had no access to education. One member of All Souls felt particularly strongly that the congregation needed to address this, and with Bellows' help and encouragement, Peter Cooper built Cooper Union and created a place where people who had no money could get an education. Another pressing ethical challenge during that era was the appalling treatment of horses, the main means of transport and commerce. One member of All Souls felt particularly strongly about that. His name was Peter Berg. And with Bellows' help and the congregation's encouragement, Peter Berg was the first president and Bellows the first vice president of the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. It's a long shadow. In the dark of the night, I wonder if I'm up to the challenge. I also wonder if you're up to the challenge. If you are visionary enough and courageous enough to stand with those who have gone before us. Are we up to the challenge? A couple of weeks ago, I ran across a book. It's titled Reinventing Fire by Amory Lovins. Amory Lovins is one of those brilliant iconoclasts that it's impossible not to love. Dropped out of Harvard, dropped out of Oxford, ended up running an organization called the Rocky Mountain Institute. He's a specialist on energy and on alternative energy. He believes that our current energy policy as a nation is, or our lack of a policy is perhaps a better way of saying it, is headed for doom. So his response was, if you can't solve a problem, it's not because the problem is too big, it's because it's too small. Make it bigger. So what Amory Lovins did with his team at the Rocky Mountain Institute was to make this problem impossibly large. He says, imagine fuel without fear. No climate change, no oil spills, dead coal miners, dirty air, devastated lands, lost wildlife. No energy poverty. No oil-fed wars, tyrannies, or terrorists. Nothing to run out of, nothing to cut off, nothing to worry about. Just energy abundance, benign and affordable for all, forever. He says, that richer, fairer, cooler, safer world is possible, practical, even profitable. We just need a new fire. The old fire, you see, is the buried remains of ancient swamps. The new fire is a nuclear furnace conveniently sited 93 million miles away. He says, imagine this. 2050, 38 years from now, the U.S. economy will be 2.5 times the size it is now. He says, imagine an economy 2.5 times the size it is now that needs no oil, no coal, no nuclear energy, 1/3 less natural gas, and no new inventions. This transition would cost $5 trillion less than business as usual. It requires no new federal taxes, subsidies, mandates, or laws. And it needs no act of Congress.